Joining us now is a man who, on his best days at work, is a sort of anonymous guy who you wouldn't recognize. On his worst days at work, everybody in the country knows who he is and knows his Twitter handle. Chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Mr. Tom Perez. Mr. Chairman, thank you for being here.
It's always good to be with you, Rachel.
So everybody is mad at you. Do you understand why that is? Does the buck stop with you? Should people be mad at the National Democratic Party?
Well, listen, I understand that as part of the job. You know, what happened in Iowa was unacceptable, and the party chair has acknowledged that. He's apologized for that, and we've worked together over the last few days to fix the challenges. And I'm very relieved that we now have 90% or 100% reported. At the same time, there have been reports, and we've seen in the tabulation process that there were some questions raised. There was an example of a precinct in Black Hawk County where I think 83 state delegate equivalents were apportioned to Deval Patrick, which was a clear error. And so we all care. We have a shared interest in making sure we have accuracy. Mm-hmm. And so what we did today in asking to make sure that if people need a recanvass in this precinct or that precinct, that it's done. Because if people raise legitimate concerns about what happened in this precinct, we care about accuracy. That's why it took us longer, because our North Star was indeed accuracy. But
are you calling for a statewide recanvass, or are you calling for a recanvass in individual precincts?
No, we're calling for the latter. And we're calling for the latter because there were reports of concerns in a number of precincts. I don't know the precise number. And, you know, one of the things that is important for your viewers to understand is, in the grand scheme of things, you got to get 1,991 delegates to the National Convention to win the nomination. There are 41 in Iowa. And in all likelihood, you know, given that we have there's a concern here, a concern there, in a number of precincts, in all likelihood, that's not going to affect the national delegate math. The range of the allocation of those 41 is not likely to be affected by any additional review, because there are over 2,000 or so state delegate equivalents. The reason why I think it's important is because I want to make sure that every Iowa voter knows that their vote was counted, and I want to make sure every voter across this country knows that their vote was counted, and that we take our commitment to accuracy very seriously.
Well, the way I understand the rules for the state party, at least as articulated through the press today, is that a candidate or a campaign can ask for a recount or a recanvass. They have to pay. They have to have a good reason for it, and they have to pay for it if they do it. There doesn't seem to be any provision for anybody else, including the national party, to request that. Is the state party actually going to do what you requested?
Well, we've already been working with them on these examples. I mentioned the incident in Black Hawk County. That has been corrected. And as others come to our attention, I certainly intend to bring them to the attention of the party. And I'm sure that we'll be able to get through this. Listen, I appreciate the fact that the party chair apologized. This was a major league failure. He owned up to it. And we've been there with him ever since, because we have to get it right. That's why we had a team there. And what we're doing now, Rachel, is making sure we count every vote, making sure we follow up on every lead, and then make sure we learn from this so that moving forward, we are applying these lessons so that everybody will have confidence in every primary or caucus that we have.
I feel like the national conversation around elections and technology has really been about vulnerability to hacking and bad actors. After what we just went through in Iowa, though, there's obviously now this very pressing question as to whether or not the election technology just works, period, whether or not there are external actors who are trying to mess with it. Does the national party, do you as national party chairman have a role in that, or is this a 50 states, 50 systems free-for-all?
We absolutely have a role in it, and let me give you an example relative to Iowa. We had a long conversation beginning in 2017 about reforms in the party. We do that every 4 years, and make no mistake about it, we're going to do it again after this cycle. And two of the conversations were one about superdelegates, and we've made major reforms in superdelegates to return power to the people. And the other was about primaries and caucuses. And I believe that when you have more primaries, more people participate. And so we created incentives for people to participate in primaries. There were 14 states in 2016 that held caucuses. 7 of those states took advantage of the incentives and are now primary states.
So
Iowa
7
chose
states that used to be caucuses are going to be primary
correct.
states this year.
And Iowa chose not to. And and they gave us a plan. And one of the things, and this gets to the heart of your question about technology, one of the proposals in their plan was to have a telephone caucus for people who couldn't participate. And our Rules and Bylaws Committee said no. And we said no because we had a red team of cybersecurity experts who concluded that it posed too many problems. And problems of 2 varieties. Number 1, cybersecurity challenges. Mm-hmm. And number 2, basic operational challenges. And this gets to your broader issue. The Democratic Party, I think, is at its best when our mission, together with our state party partners, is to help Democrats win up and down the ballot. And we've done a pretty damn good job of that since 2017. We had 15 governors who were Democrats when I got on the job. We have 24 now. We have Speaker Nancy Pelosi. We flipped 10 state houses from red to blue. That is where we are at our sweet spot. Administering elections is a really challenging thing. I know that because when I was in the Civil Rights Division, I sued professionals, people who did this for a living and screwed it up. It's not easy. And I think we have to have a conversation. And we did have that conversation as a party about primaries and caucuses. And what this experience in Iowa teaches me is that conversation needs to continue because it's asking a lot for well-intentioned people. And the people of Iowa are well-intentioned. The party chair is well-intentioned. Everyone around him is well-intentioned. But this is hard. And when you factor in, calls being made and other shenanigans, we need to continue that conversation. And we need to continue the conversation, and we will, because every 4 years we talk about what we learned and what we need to do differently. And in 2004, we added South Carolina and Nevada because we were having a conversation about order. And I know that's another issue that I'm sure will be revisited after this next cycle.
We're actually going to revisit that right after this next commercial break, if you consent to sit there.
Absolutely.
Right, we'll be right back with Democratic Party Chairman Tom Perez right after this. Stay with us.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.